Welcome back to School Briefs. Claire, it's great to have you back with us for another week. Are you in a different location to your
I
normal?
am in a different location this week, Liam. So I am down in Queenstown for the SPANS Secondary Principals Association conference. So looking forward to that kicking off. We've got Hannah O'Regan coming to speak. I'm looking forward to catching up with Bruce and Therese, who I know are down here doing workshops as well. So it should be a bit of a humdinger of a week, and hopefully some good sort of critical conversations going on as well.
Cool. And we are heading into budget week this week, but that doesn't mean that last week was boring or uneventful.
Woo-wee!
We've got lots to kick off with. Where do you want to start?
Well, I'm like we've been talking a lot online. Everyone's been having big discussions about this 11th hour Education Act amendment. You know, if we thought the system reform bill was bad enough, we got sort of the icing on the cake in terms of this, what felt like a complete 11th hour amendment bill got dropped this week, giving us no time to respond to it, giving even our political friends no time to really discuss it or tease out. And there was a whole lot of things in there that were really concerning to me. You know, for me, the two things that really stood out in that amendment bill was the change to the Teaching Council. So they have announced that there is no longer going to be any elected members on the Teaching Council. You know, it was bad enough that it was getting reduced, it was getting narrowed. It looked like there was going to be a lot of sort of political control. We know with the system reform bill that functions of the Teaching Council are being handed over to the ministry. And lo and behold, what do we got? We've got a complete loss of elected members. And that's really concerning. And then don't get me started on the control of the curriculum being so clearly handed over as well.
You know, the real frustrating thing is the claim that the Teaching Council is still an independent Crown entity. So frustrating. And I guess, unsurprisingly, the logic around the move doesn't make any sense other than this is just an absolute total power grab from the Minister of Education.
Absolutely unforgivable.
Because
Out of line with international jurisdictions as well. Totally out of line.
Yeah, because the argument in the draft bill was that we had to reduce the number of elected people from the profession down to 3. And the justification at the time was it's really important that grassroots member teacher voice was heard, and therefore we needed a specific carve out for ECE, for primary and for secondary. And then last minute, apparently all of those arguments are just completely out the window now, and the minister needs total power. They've also strengthened the wording around the minister to be able to fire a person at will if they clearly step out of line. It just feels so.
I mean, you combine that with the teaching standards being handed over to the ministry that potentially will control that teacher voice as well. Like, my worry is that we're going to see some real changes to those teaching standards in the very near future that's going to try and shut down discourse. And I find it really interesting because this must seem appealing to a controlling politician whilst they're in power. And I don't understand why they would want to set up something that, say they get voted out and the other side of government gets in. I can only imagine how upset they would be that they've handed these powers off to a single entity or a singular person. It's just, I mean, haven't we all learned that the key to making good decisions is having a diverse mix of people at the table?
Yep. And when people talk about the need for politics to be depoliticised out of education, this type of move is exactly what they're talking about, because they know when there is a change of government, one of the first things they're going to do is kind of restore professional voice to the Teaching Council, because under this current model, there is no carve-outs for anybody to have a teaching qualification to be on there. We know that that's the type of stuff that a change of government's not going to be interested in, and so we're then going to go through another transformation of the Teaching Council, and people on the ground know that none of this stuff makes a difference to learning outcomes for children. All we're doing is kind of wasting time, and for me, we've kind of seen that firsthand at school over the last couple of weeks as we've really started to grapple with what do the new teaching standards look like in our various systems that we have in place,
Yeah.
and to think that we're going to be heading in either 6 months, 3 years, or 6 years into another kind of round of it. Round
It's
of
such a waste of time and money.
and,
It's such an incredible waste. And I can't help reflecting on the fact that, it wasn't that long ago that it felt like a very capable CE of Teaching Council was moved on very swiftly. And I can't help thinking how much of that was to do with the fact that they knew that these amendments were coming, because having worked under that particular CE when I was part of the Education Council and Teaching Council before that, I know for a fact that that person would not have sat quietly while amendments like these were taking place. So it's to me, there's another story that we're going to talk about today. Convenient timing, my friend. And I'm really concerned that all of it is to do with deprofessionaling the teaching profession, silencing voices, and closing ranks and having a less and less diverse. Like, I get really peeved off when people say that, you're just talking like, what do you want? You just want all your lefty ideas in. It's like, actually, no, I don't just want all my lefty ideas in. I want to know that I'm sitting, I critiqued something that was an NZ initiative event, and they said, oh, yeah, you just hate that because it's NZ initiative. I said, no, I don't. It's just that it's singular. Like, I will be open. I'm the person that suggests we have Michael Johnston at our AEC event. Like, I'm a huge proponent and actually thinking the best outcomes come when we listen to diverse voices. And I think the narrowing of voices is utterly, utterly frustrating at the moment, and actually really dangerous.
And because I don't hear calls from the people that we tend to talk to around the need for the removal of voice from people with alternative ideas.
No, no.
And and actually, we should talk about in the future the New Zealand initiative, because they're doing some really interesting thinking around needing to turn the corner on tomorrow's schools, and
Yep.
what kind of different ways of organising the system could look like. And that's a discussion I'm really interested in. Less so if we have a minister that wants to kind of control things in the way
Yeah.
that we are seeing. But I mean, there is a world in which actually I think this kind of bums on seats school competition model needs to be removed from the system. And the New Zealand initiative are doing some interesting thinking in that space.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And as I say, I don't dismiss them. Like, I think that they are one of the voices, and we just need to make sure that whenever decisions get made in a policy space or beyond, that, other voices are heard alongside them as well. And yeah, and that comes back to the control of the curriculum. So one of the amendments we saw in that bill was the ability for the minister to be able to change the curriculum in a singular way. No one person, I don't care who they are. This is not about the actual person who's the minister at the moment, or not just about that, because this is no one person, whether it's a minister from the left or the right or the middle or another planet. You don't want a singular person being able to have that control. It really worries me. Does it worry you, Liam?
Um, Hugely. I mean, these aren't the kind of approaches that we see playing out in schools, where it's just kind of one person wandering around making all of their rules. I mean, people in education tend to understand that there are limits to their own understanding around what works.
Yeah.
So wants to kind of get alongside other people to stress test ideas. And that kind of collaborative feel is something that I think brings a lot of us into education.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so to not see that replicated at all levels of the system is really disheartening, particularly when you can drive a truck through so many of the ideas coming out of this government in education.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
going a little bit off topic, but one of the comments Erica made when talking to Jack Tame on Q&A was that she wasn't interested in talking about all of the things that happen in a child's life outside of school, like poverty and housing. And if
So
you're looking
irrelevant.
at education, if you're looking at education through that lens, you're actually not trying to come up with solutions for the actual issue
That
that
smacks of a person who hasn't spent a moment in an actual school, that hasn't spent a moment in the classroom. I mean, I'm sorry, that is just the most naive response, and yet then also turns around and makes these sort of wide statements about how much they've done for certain sectors of our community as well. Really upsetting. But you know, one thing I think we need to point out and highlight for people is all of this is more dangerous because of the system reform bill and the changes to the teaching standards around mandates. So for the first time that I can ever remember, we're going to have a mandated curriculum. And if you look at our new standards for the teaching profession that came out this year, one of the standards is delivering the mandated curriculum. Interestingly, that was in there before the reform bill even went through. There's a little asterisk and note down the bottom of that sort of A3 page that says, this is, of course, is based on, the reform bill passing. But what a clanger, man. What an absolute dangerous combination.
I don't want to frighten people, but my hot take for what a second term government will look like, given what we've seen in the first term, is that they're going to want to bring people working in education sector under the Public Service Act so that people can't do this, where they're talking out, critiquing what's happening in government. And so I reckon there's going to be a much more broader silencing of the profession in a kind of second term National Act New Zealand government.
Particularly if you combine it with the Ofstedisation of Ero. Hello.
Yep.
I mean, that is, we've gone from having a carrot and support to a stick, and it's, occasionally I was reflecting on this the other day with a friend. I went, I feel like I need to start wearing a freaking tin hat. Like, as soon as you start pulling things together and draw all the points together, it's really, really worrying. That level of tightening of control, and shutting down of voices and mandating and punitive responses to schools who have those very situations that Erica says she doesn't care about, like societal pressures and trauma and, massive poverty and complex. I'm really interested recently around our what I call at-risk behaviour students. So the ones who are on the fringe, who are engaging in dangerous behaviours outside school, and there's parts of that are coming into school. It's just absolute nonsense that we can't consider and shouldn't consider. I mean, now is the time where we should be really doing a deep dive into trauma-informed practice and resourcing learning support adequately. Which brings me to the next one, the whole homeschooling announcement that we heard this week. I can't help thinking it ain't a coincidence that the very week that this is announced, the MOE finally, supposedly after months and months of OIAs, finally drop that Tom Phillips had permission to homeschool his 3 children.
Yeah, look, I mean, we're just seeing far too many of these coincidental things. It's a bit tangential, but the number of crap announcements that have come out in the last 2 weeks almost makes you think as if they're trying to drop everything in within a very short time frame so that you can't respond to everything. And
what's it say? You flood the zone with shit?
Yeah, that's right. And it's been interesting hearing from a number of kind of homeschooling families around the kind of very valid reason why some parents are in that situation, and to think that they are then going to have these types of assessments forced upon them is shocking. And I hate the way it's been presented as if there's a real low trust environment and this is the only way to ensure academic rigor for kids, because often lots of these homeschooling families have left the system because they don't work for their child, and that's a decision that they have made. And so to then try and force the same mechanisms in the schooling sector onto homeschooling families is a real slap in the face. And I like that conversation around how do we ensure quality learning outcomes, but this isn't the way to do it. It's lazy.
And can I put my tin hat back on at the moment? When I Googled to get the wording of the homeschooling change in legislation, you know what came up first? Great big Crimson Education advert for homeschooling. And I've got some real concerns about how entities like Crimson are framing themselves up to an alternative to Te Kura. So if you look at their offerings, they're really doubling down on the hybrid online learning offerings that they do. They are doubling down on their homeschooling options. They are hoovering up small schools for neurodivergent students. So here in Auckland, there's been a number of schools that have been swallowed up by Crimson Education. We all know that John Key is the chair, at least I hope we all know that John Key is the chair of Crimson Education. I'm sorry, but again, I can't help but start joining the dots and say, what is going on here? Like, I think Te Kura need to be looking very carefully at what is going on. I think our homeschooling networks need to be cognizant of entities such as that in a time where we've got a system reform bill that enables charter schools to become chains of charter schools.
Yeah,
We have got the absolute demolition of the state system underway, and it's happening in plain view.
and isn't Crimson as a company just constantly reshifting the way they work to better maximise how
They're
you
worth
can kind of
millions.
hoover up taxpayers' money? Because there was that kind of documentary a year ago investigating all of these offices that they had in New York and
Post
London.
offices.
Yeah, and they were just kind of like shells. But
Yeah,
now you kind of start to see them looking at the New Zealand landscape and thinking, "Oh, where can we extract some more taxpayers' funding?" And then shifting their business model into that. It's
yeah.
just really disheartening.
Yeah, it's really what, and you look like certain ministers, you look at their reels and their adverts, and it sounds really shiny and impressive and benign and all about looking after at-risk young people or helping young people get into university. But we've got to be critical. You know, this isn't, again, it's not about left leaning, right leaning. You know, this is about what we want as a strong democracy with a well resourced state system that's available to everyone at no cost. You know, like, we've got to remember what we hold dear. And at the moment, so much is under threat. And that brings us actually around to why it's under threat: the budget.
Oh,
Um,
before we get there though,
yes,
because it isn't all doom and gloom.
no,
Because given those last minute amendments, we wanted to kind of bring some voice out of what
yes,
people thought.
yes.
What happened, Claire, when we put the call out?
Oh, so the fantastic thing was, I know that you did a call out, I did a call out, our friends did a call out, and we asked for people in the space of an evening to send through their submissions, their concerns they had about those last minute Education Act Amendment bill, because as we know, there was no formal mechanism for doing that. They had shut down the opportunity. There wasn't going to be a select committee about that particular paper. So we made a call out, and I believe, how many submissions did we end up getting in the space of a few hours?
Oh, within the space of a few hours, about 50, but
Yeah,
within the space of about 2 days, there was about 75.
yeah.
And what I loved about them was sometimes when you get these kind of like urgent calls, you'll just put a couple of sentences down so that you're kind of contributing. But it was the quality of what people took the time out of their evenings.
Yeah.
We have some
Our
very
overworked, overwhelmed education workforce that seems to get thrown under the bus left, right, and centre. Oh my goodness, they're amazing. You know, the stuff that they are doing and what they actually and they understand. They understand the risks of these particular changes.
Yeah, and so obviously the scrutiny of the bill has kind of come and gone for now, given that it's worked through Parliament. But the quality of those contributions means that we actually need to find a different way to give voice to those. And
Mm,
so we might think about how we can kind of pull those together and maybe kind of formally present them to MPs that want to make use of them.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that's how we've got to take the power back. Like, if they're not going to give us our voice, then we will work together. And, you know, and a big shout out. I don't know about you. I've had some lovely comments over the last couple of weeks from people, you know, really showing appreciation for the work that the Aotearoa Educators Collective is doing. You know, not to sit here and pat ourselves on the back, but, you know, our wider network of AEC and the incredible work that's going on. It's lovely when people take the time to say a bit of a thank you. and what can feel like a bit of a thankless space at this time. So we've got the budget results. So we've got a few things that we're doing. You did the survey. We now have a bit of a report that we've pulled together about the budget results. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Liam? What did you see?
Yeah, so by the time people start listening to this, the results are going to be out there. And so, Claire, I thought I would give some of the kind of key findings to you, and you kind of like sense check them around whether or not you thought this is where people would be.
Yeah.
So one of the questions was just asking people if we're moving in the right direction, we're on the right track, but with some concerns moving in the wrong direction, we're on the right track, but with some concerns moving in the wrong direction. What percentage of respondents do you think thought we were moving in the wrong direction?
Yeah. So those are the questions asked. How many submitters
Oh,
did we get?
sorry. Sorry. What percentage of people do you think felt we were moving in the wrong direction?
99.9? 100.
Close. 89%
Oh, hey.
thought we were moving in the wrong direction, and there's about 8% that thought we were on the right track, but with some concerns.
Yeah. Yeah. Doesn't
And
let you on us, does it?
no. Moving on, we then had people be able to select various different priority areas. They could kind of multi-select. 64% said learning support and inclusive education was the priority area. Curriculum support was 50%, and student mental health and wellbeing was 50%. Do they sound about right?
Yeah, I think so. That doesn't surprise me at all. Yeah.
When you, the one that stood out there for me is the 50% around curriculum support. Because how do you interpret that? Because in one hand, I saw that being selected by half the people,
Yeah.
but at the same time, there's been kind of real pushback from people just getting more textbooks and workbooks being
Yeah.
dumped on
Well,
them.
we've got to remember that's the split in our sector. So that's the primary sector experience. The secondary sector hasn't had anything like curriculum support for an eon. And I think the trouble is it's got to be fit for purpose as well. So whilst people recognise that there's been support, it's been so narrow. You know, this idea that it can only be structured literacy, it can only be the textbooks in that space. So I think people are trying to maybe articulate that it's not just about the quantity, it's about the quality and the fit of the resourcing as well in that space.
Yeah, one thing that came through the qualitative comments, which I thought was quite nuanced, is that what they don't want are these like mass-produced, rolled out
Mm.
textbooks and workbooks. What they actually want is PLD and time to be able to develop resources that work within their local context.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
I remember the back in the day when they rolled out NCA. Were they called bumper days or something like that? PTA ran them. Can't remember. They were whole school things where we got the new NCA standards, and then you were supported to contextualize and do the learning design in your own context.
yep.
And that feels like it's the missing piece, eh?
Yeah, yep. Now, the last one I'll touch on is what's one thing the government could include in this budget that would make you stay in education for the next 10 years? What would you choose?
Better remuneration.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is that heartless? I still feel like there's something around the recognition of the status of the teaching profession. But I don't know what did come through.
Competitive salaries
Yeah,
and kind of internationally competitive salaries came through as a weak theme. So it was definitely there. Top three, though, were permanent school attached teacher aid funding.
yes, learning support, of course, of course. So the people
Um,
that can actually help you make your job actually doable.
a strong theme that we have. Oh, yeah, I think that's quite right. It's for me about teacher aides
Yeah,
will give teachers the chance to
do what
focus
they do
on
best. Yeah.
parts of their role that actually brought them into the sector.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because that relational stuff can be really lost when you're chasing your tail in terms of meeting, all of the diverse needs in your classroom for sure.
And the second one was around system stability and reduced political churn, which has been like the entire theme of this discussion.
Yeah, yeah,
And then the last one you nailed, professional autonomy and trust.
yeah. Yeah. And it's it's showing respect. It's showing respect for the incredible work that people do. I think that is the real frustration. So it's going to be exciting. So we've got our report coming out, which is pulling together all the responses from the fabulous people that filled in the survey. And then this week, we're going to try and do a couple of things around the budget announcement. I'm going to try and reach out to our friends at BERL, the Business Economic Research body. I'm hoping we can do a little slot before. I'm just putting it out there. I'm hoping I manifest it by saying it on school briefs. Hoping to do a wee slot, hopefully with Killian from BERL, about the education budget and how it works. But also, they did a really interesting, and I'll share this regardless, a really interesting report that looked at how much funding we get in the compulsory and tertiary sector, how much of the pie we get compared to other countries. Where do you think we came? Do you think we're well resourced in education in New Zealand or not? If you think of
Um,
OECD countries.
Given the challenges in our tax policy space, I would say we will be mid.
We were one of the lowest. It is a damning report. Like in terms of the percentage of the national spend that goes on education, New Zealand is, if we're worried about rankings, my friend, these are the rankings we should be ashamed of. We're actually one of the lowest in the developed countries in terms of the percentage, particularly at tertiary, real underfunding in that space. So, and, interesting when we've just killed fees free. Like, I know that was a problematic and it wasn't necessarily, there could be other ways we could support our young people, but we need to keep our governments in check, our spending. That's under consecutive governments. This isn't a current government thing. We have for some time critically underfunded our education sector. So I'll try to get Killian on board and we'll try to do a little brief podcast with him and talk that through. We'll share it regardless. But then we've got budget day on Thursday. And what are we going to do then?
What we thought we might do is go live and bring in a couple of sector specialists to give their hot takes on what came out of the budget for their part of the world. And I thought if we kind of framed it around what people said through the budget survey they wanted out of the budget and how well that landed, and we'll be able to spend a bit of time looking at the kind of good and the bad and the ugly.
Yeah, and so the aim is that we're doing this Thursday, 8 o'clock as a Substack live. So anyone listening here would love you should join us in real time. There'll be an opportunity for you to ask questions, add your comments, add your hot takes on how the education budget landed. It's going to be both Liam and I are a little bit pressed for time. So, it's going to be a organic affair, that kicks off around about 8 o'clock, hopefully.
Are you trying to lower expectations?
Yeah, it's important. You don't want to overpromise and underdeliver.
That's right.
I don't think there's any risk of us ever overpromising. This is truly like I don't know about this. This is really just people getting to join in our therapy sessions that we do once a week, isn't it?
That's right. Hey,
Yeah.
just because I know we are wrapping up, mixed feelings around the fact that we are launching on Tuesday at 4 p.m. The follow-up to our report, Beyond Capacity, Learning Support in Crisis. We are lucky that Dr. Sarah Iona has done a follow-up to that 1 year on, looking at how the government's learning support budget has shifted things on the ground. And I've got mixed feelings because it is it's a great report, and I'm really glad that we're kind of giving full voice to it. But man, some of the stories coming out of it are just heartbreaking.
Just not shifting the dial, eh? It's and that's where just throwing a lolly scramble, throwing a money isn't always the answer, eh? When there isn't the strategy and the people and the resources and the interventions available, just throwing some more money at the issue doesn't really change the outcomes. But Sarah has once again done some really incredible, insightful, and really cool. We've got, I don't think it's a secret, is it, that Ginny Anderson has offered to host that event. So that's happening at the Parliamentary Buildings, I think 4 o'clock on Tuesday, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. There's a post on Substack if people wanted to RSVP to it.
So if you're in the Wellington area, come along.
Yeah, that's right. I think we might get a very firm critique that that the kind of solution to learning support isn't more structured literacy.
Yeah.
Mm.
Amazing. Who knew?
So,
Anyway, that brings, look, we just made it just in time. So,
nice.
yeah.
Cool. Thanks for your time, Claire. I'll catch you later.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.